Hello again, everybody. This is attorney Kevin Pritchett bringing you another episode of the Keeping It Real Straight Smoke podcast. On this podcast, I bring you real legal issues, real legal solutions, no BS. I give you the straight smoke. But first, a legal disclaimer. This podcast is intended to be general information only. It is not intended to be financial, legal, or accounting advice. Should you want specific legal, accounting, or financial advice, you should seek licensed, experienced professionals in those areas. Okay, my friends, continuing again today in the series I've been doing recently on the best way, the right way to own real estate. In today's podcast, we're going to talk about how to own investment real estate the right way, as opposed to how to own your personal property. Very different concepts. Also, we're going to talk about business succession issues and investment assets. At first, I was going to put these in two different podcasts, but I think the issues are so interrelated, they'll make more sense to you and stick more in context if I'm presenting all of these together. Okay, let's start. The wrong way. Investment real estate. Let's say you have a piece of real estate. By investment property or real estate, I mean something that is not your personal home or vacation home, an investment property. And you own that property in your individual name, Tony Stark. Why is this wrong? As we have seen from previous podcast episodes, Tony Stark dies. There's nobody alive to sign the deed, and you have probate. Expensive, it's public, and it causes delays. If this is an asset for a significant entity, filing a probate claim in the name of a corporate entity will bring the sharks out like a piece of meat in water. Here's another problem. If you own a piece of investment property in your individual name, this individual ownership name eliminates the asset protection. One of the main purposes of using an entity, a corporation, limited liability company, partnership, limited partnership, that is to protect you, shield you, create a buffer between you and the investment activity. When you have this corporate protection, if there is a loss at the level of the entity, the loss stops at that entity, and all of your personal wealth, your other personal assets, are not at risk. Let me give you an example. Let's say you had an entity. It owned a piece of real estate. Somebody slipped and fall, and God forbid, let's say they lost their lives. The heirs of that person who died file a wrongful death claim against the entity, ABC Inc., that owned the property. And let's say there was a huge judgment against that corporation of millions of dollars. Well, let's say you have insurance. The insurance covers it. Okay, let's say the insurance doesn't cover it. The judgment would be attached to the entity, but if the entity didn't have it, the judgment does not roll over into you individually. So you see how important it is to maintain the asset protection at the corporate entity level. That's for limited liability companies or corporations both. But if you own that piece of property in your individual name, you are almost automatically voiding that corporate protection. So it would subject any losses that happened at that corporate entity might very well reside and go over into your personal situation. You want to avoid that like the plague. The way to avoid it is to have all investment property owned in the name of the entity, the corporation, the limited liability company, and operate that entity like a company. Don't use personal assets. Don't take corporate money and buy personal assets with it. That is what they call piercing the corporate veil and eliminates the corporate protection. The theory is you didn't operate like this was an entity. You were operating like it was your personal money. So the law is going to treat it like it's your personal situation, and you won't get the corporate protection. Okay, so the right way to own investment real estate assets, I have real estate here, but it's any kind of asset that you want owned by an entity and protected with the corporate veil, is Stark Industries, Inc., or LLC. This titling gives the entity asset protection, or the entity is afforded asset protection. And if there is a loss at the level of that entity, the loss does not spill over into you individually. Here is an added point here that I see missed all the time, and I mean all the time. It's okay that you have investment property owned by an entity, but you must also have succession language in those entity documents that state when Tony Stark passes away, Tony Stark's shares or equity in that entity go to XYZ. The document should also provide the source, the amount of funds that are going to be used to purchase that entity, if the corporation's buying it, or if the deceased person's heirs are to get it in cash. The corporate document should provide the source of funds, the amount of funds, the valuation, how to value Tony Stark's equity, and the procedure for dispensing with that equity in accordance with the procedures of the document. Using this procedure, it's fairly simple, a couple paragraphs in your operating agreement if it's an LLC, or your bylaws if it's a corporation, will avoid the dreaded probate. As we've talked before, probate is public, is expensive, and it causes delays. So to recap, the right way to own an investment asset, Stark Industries LLC or Stark Industries Inc., with succession language in the bylaws of the LLC. This is where people mess up and don't do this. Succession language that states who gets Tony's equity, what's the money going to come from to buy it, the amount of the funds, the valuation, and the procedure. In this way, you can avoid probate. As always, you have a choice. You can either take this information in, not do anything, or you can take the simple processes, simple procedures required to fix it. My friends, nothing gets better with neglect. Okay, that's Kevin Pritchett for today's issue of the Keeping It Real podcast, how to own investment real estate assets the right way. Click the link down below to get your free, not your free consultation, but your one-on-one consultation, so I can show you exactly what you need to do in order to address this problem. Or you can wait and not do it, and you or your heirs can come by and write me fat checks to fix this in probate. It's up to you. That's it, my friends. That's all for today's issue of the Keeping It Real Straight Smoke Legal Podcast. See you next time.